Welcome back, everybody. Just Mike here. I hope you've had or are having a happy New Year's. Anyway, today we're going to work on a New England clock again. Now, in my Christmas video, I showed this clock, and I did say that it was a one-day clock. These aren't one-day clocks. I'm not sure if the New England Clock Company makes a one-day clock. These are I think they'd consider it an 8-day clock. Every 7 days you wind these things up. I also mentioned about the pendulum. The pendulum isn't anything special. It's very lightweight, and you could possibly use a pendulum out of let's say a battery movement. Let me show you the New England clock I'm going to work on now, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, is use the pendulum out of a battery movement, because I'm missing the pendulum to this clock. So this clock is much bigger, we'll say. Going from side to side, we're at about, let's just say 12.5 inches. Going from the tip down, we're about 17 inches. So it is a much bigger clock, but still, it's a 8-day clock. As far as I know, most of our clocks are an 8-day clock, and I don't think I've ever seen a 1-day. They might have, well, actually they do have clocks that'll run 2 days, or they have the 8-day clocks. This one right here is an 8-day clock. It's got the big weights on it, so that almost is pretty obvious. This whole deal here is a New England clock, and it's also an 8-day clock. This is the one I oiled with clock movement oil, and it ran 2 years. It quit, and so I need to use my car oil on it. This is my battery movement. All these are New England Clock Company. This one here, right there, is my calendar clock. It's also a New England Clock Company, and I do believe it's a 2-week play on it. This one also runs a week. I showed in my Christmas video. And there's many more designs that they have. This here, I got to measure it with my pendulum on the other clock to see if this is about the right size. This happens to be, it says it's a 12-inch made in Japan off of a battery movement. And if this happens to be the right size, then it'll work just fine. The other ones, they have no weight to them. This one actually feels just as heavy as the ones that actually come with this clock. And usually that's why I don't like buying these clocks if they don't have a pendulum, because sometimes that could be a pain in the bottom to get a pendulum, unless you just go ahead and order yourself a pendulum for a battery movement. And I'm sure it's going to be a lot cheaper too. So anyway, to start on this clock, we're going to take that nut off. Then of course we have these two nuts, in the kind of look like bolts because they're threaded in. We need to take those off. Oh, I wanted to mention, on the back side, you'll notice this has got a board that's screwed in. If it's screwed in, you can go ahead and use that hole to hang this clock. If this has those plastic things that come over to hold this back on, that clock was never meant to hang from the wall, because those plastic deals aren't enough to actually hold the boxes you might think it would. I think they have steeple clocks that might have the plastic things, and people like to hang them too. And if they do, they need to screw the board in and not use those plastic deals that just come over and hold on to the board. So there we have a movement, or I should say a metal cover over our movement. Now this clock actually ticks, but I think what we should possibly do is go ahead and oil this clock so it'll run for quite a while longer, 5 to 7 years. I'm sure this has never been oiled. And to get that movement off, like I say, we got to take the hands off. This has got the same pendulum with the spring wire as the other clock. So let me start taking this stuff off if I can. This actually has a small nut and the concaved washer. And of course this is pressure fitted on. And again, we're going to take our fatter screwdriver and take these off. And on this one, I'm gonna clean this. This looks pretty good compared to normal, but I'll spray some Windex on a paper towel, onto the paper towel, then I'll just give this a quick wipe. Otherwise, this does have a little bit of scratching on it, but not much. But I think what little I have on this, I'm just going to go ahead and wax the clock, and if there are any damaged areas, they should go ahead and automatically darken up. So let me hold on to the movement as we get this last piece out. Here again we have the piece of cardboard here. The reason why this cardboard's here to prevent this from wanting to slip around. I don't think it's that big of a deal because these are bolted in, we'll say, but that's the way they have this one made. And on this one, oh good, we have E-clips that we need to take off. Let's see, you got 3 of them, just like the Christmas clock, but the Christmas clock had plastic, where all this is metal. So we have the 3 E-clips off. This here looks like maybe someone had this apart before, because we had one real small clip and 2 larger ones. There we go. And they look like they should have all been the same, because those are all the same here. So anyway, on this clock here, before I oil it, there is no dust in here. For just inspection. So I'm going to go ahead. I was originally going to blow it out with this canned air that you can use for keyboards. And I don't see any need in it. There's no cobwebs, no nothing in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and oil each one of these pivots in order to make this thing happy again. And I'm not even going to open the spring. If your spring has to be turned right, there is a hole there if you wanted to put just a little bit of oil in there. In fact, well, I can't wind it up because it's already wound, so if you were able to, well, it has to tick down, I think, in order to get that hole to move over for you so you can oil a little bit more, but it's only a small hole. It's not too important. If your clock was stopping, I think it's easy enough to take this thing apart and rebuild, or I shouldn't say rebuild, but clean and oil that spring. If you watch my this year's Christmas video, you would see how I did that one. Again, if you look inside there, you can see this also has a slip clutch on it. Right down where it first goes in. And on here we're going to go ahead. I know it's been running, but I'm going to go ahead and use oil on the pallets for the pendulum to make sure there's no friction, and this thing should run just smoothly as butter melting in a microwave. UW 22/4. So before I put this in, I think I'm going to go ahead and get this here waxed and clean the dial. Got the movement put back on, and then I put the surround, the dust cover back on, and now to put the back on. And I did get the hands installed. Figure it's easier to put the hour on the 12 or any hour you want, as long as it's right down the center, and then put your minute hand on. Always have the minute hand pointing at the 12, and once it's pointing at the 12, because this does have a square hole in it in here, then you might have to adjust your hour hand again to be right on the hour. I could tell there was a sticker here at one time. Some people can't handle stickers on their clocks. Like I say, normally I've seen where New England Clock Company usually always puts their date of when they built the clock on the cover or on the inside, depending what type of clock it is, to kind of show it off too. And so I don't have any I don't have the foggiest on this. I'm going to say a lot of the clocks I have seen approximately in the 70s, 76, 70. I don't think I've seen a 69 or anything like that. I can't remember now. But it's nice to have a date just so you have an idea how old your clock could be. I also wanted to mention on this clock, it's got these nice decorative deals here. Well, there are two missing. And so I just got the standard, I guess we'll say, plugs. I already had them. You don't even notice it because all it is just a detail that sticks out a little bit. No one would have known if I hadn't have said anything. So anyway, now I gotta let this wax soak into the clock before I buff it off. And when I buff it off, it normally gives a sheen to a finished clock. Well, the clock is ticking away with that cheap battery pendulum, and it looks good too. So, another New England clock to add to my collection, and that's running good. Anyway, I do hope you guys are having a wonderful 2025, even though this video is a day early, but I hope it's great for you, and let's hope our 2025 goes as fantastic as we dream it should. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe. Why? Because it's free. And give me a thumbs up if you don't mind, because I enjoy the count and it helps on the YouTube videos or whatever. Anyway, until next time, God bless.